Hello and welcome to the Jungle Brothers podcast. I am your host, Joey, and today Paulie and I are joined by a lovely fella named Rikki Gilbey. Rikki is a member of our gym, and I first met him once he'd been training with us for a few weeks. Turns out the guy's a bit of a savage, knows his way around a barbell, and is pretty handy on the mats. But what was even cooler was I found out about this awesome business that he set up from scratch called Wow Hand Planes. Now, pretty simply, what they do is they produce these hand planes for body surfing, and we'll explain how that works in the episode. But the coolest layer of it is that they take plastics from the ocean, they pull them out, and then they repurpose that plastic into these awesome crafted hand planes. So he's achieving two really great things at the same time, and even better, he's building a community around body surfing, and he's really passionate about the whole thing. You can hear it in his voice, the way he tells the story. It's just a great sort of meeting of helping the environment, but also building a business and then bringing people together around something they love, which obviously speaks to us as the owners of the Jungle Brothers and the Jungle Alliance. So fantastic story, heaps of hurdles, as you would expect with any small business, from starting out in his garage, crafting these things out of timber, to now being able to have this supply chain where he repurposes this plastic. It's an amazing story, a really cool business, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, before we get into the episode, I do want to ask you for a couple of favors. Well, really the one favor is I just want you to help us promote the show a little bit. And so there's two ways that you can do that. The first thing you can do is just leave us a review on whichever podcast app you're using. So you can leave a 5-star review if you think it's worth 5 stars. And then you can probably write something like, "It's the greatest fucking show I've ever heard." And that goes a long way to informing others to check our show out. The second thing that you could do to support us is to simply share an episode with a friend of yours and share it with someone who you think would benefit from the stuff that we talk about. Just flick it across and say, "Hey, if you check these guys out, you might like this show." Really simple gestures, won't take you very long, but they go a long way for us. And it helps us to continue to get these awesome guests like Rikki in on the regular, produce these episodes each week, and just keep good content and good conversation coming out for you guys. So I would love it if you could do that. Leave us a review, share the episode with a friend, and please enjoy today's episode with Rikki Gilbey. Before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to let you know about our upcoming Coaches Intensive. This 2-day workshop is for anyone who wants to become world-class as a fitness professional. In the course, you'll learn the key skill sets needed to excel in fitness, as well as how to build a successful fitness business. Over the 2 days, we explore topics such as leadership, programming, sales, marketing, public speaking, and more. There are no prerequisites to enroll in the workshop. So whether you're a gym owner, a coach, or simply somebody who's considering a transition into fitness at some point, this course is for you. The next Coaches Intensive is on June 18 and 19, right here at Jungle Brothers Strength and Movement in Botany, Sydney. To enroll, go to junglealliance.com/courses and select the June event. As a listener of the show, you also get a sweet discount when you use the code JBPodcast at checkout. I've also popped a link to the event right here in the show notes. I look forward to working with you in our next Coaches Intensive. Now, back to the episode. Guys, so let the experience begin. Rikki Gilbey, thanks for joining us, brother. Mate, bunch of stuff I want to go into today, but I thought coolest thing would be if you could tell us what was the kernel for you to start your business? Like, where was the point where you're like, I need to go and do this thing, build these hand planes?
There was a specific moment for me.
Keep that a little bit closer for you, and just you can turn it into your...
So, I moved to Australia about 12 years ago. I moved over. I followed a girl over who is now my wife. I found myself kind of very much absorbed into her life. I moved in with her brother, worked for her dad as a chippy, and was, I didn't really have much of a life of my own, I guess. After about 12 months, I come to realize that. So I got a job in a surf store just to kind of branch myself out. I was pretty comfortable working in the construction industry. I was on some pretty good money, but I was just like, I didn't have a network of people. So I pushed my boundaries, and I got a job in a surf store just in the evenings at Patagonia.
Oh yeah.
Which I loved. I met a bunch of great people.
Patagonia considered a surf brand these days.
More so in the US.
Okay.
Yeah. They're a huge surf sector in the US. Not so much in Australia, but very much up and coming.
It's interesting just on that how they've changed. I remember my parents used to rock them, and it was like older kind of upper middle class kind of, you know, good mountaineering gear. And it's obviously always been mountaineering gear. But now it's like the kids are wearing it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like great shit.
Yeah. It was just built to last, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that kind of really helped me along and embedded that sustainability aspect into production and product and that kind of stuff. So I was working in the surf store there, and we had these hand planes come in from the US, and there was a company called Enjoy Hand Planes, and I hadn't really discovered body surfing at that point. I'd spent the last, few years learning how to surf and had got to an extremely average level of surfing.
Were you doing that? Was that in Greece prior to coming over to?
No. So this is a couple of years down the line of working at the Patagonia store.
Okay, so you were learning.
Been in Australia for 3, maybe even 4 years. Been learning to surf that whole time. Like fell in love with the ocean over here. And then got these hand planes in, and I was super curious by the idea of body surfing. And the hand planes come in, and there was these cool ones. They're made of like recycled surfboards, and they used like old recycled Patagonia clothing and like inlaid them in the fiberglass, and just like really cool kind of product. You could kind of run away with the creativity of making it. And I was like, let's just give it a go. So one of the other guys who I was working with, a guy called Ben, we grabbed some fins and went down to Bondi Beach, the iconic Bondi. Went for a body surf. So we took out these hand planes, pair of fins, and I swam out, and the very first wave I got, swam onto this wave, popped my head up. I was on like this open, glassy, green wave, rode it all the way into the beach, got wrapped up in this tiny little barrel right on the beach, and just popped up, sandal in my hair, but with the biggest smile on my face. And I was like, what was that? This was incredible. Like, I've been surfing for 3-4 years, and that was probably one of the best waves I'd ever caught. And I was like, this is like so simple and so fun. And so after that session, I was just like super stoked, went home on a massive high, numerous waves on that day. And I wanted to just find some equipment. Like I wanted to buy something decent. These ones from the US are pretty expensive. They're coming in at like 250 Australian dollars. And I was like, there's got to be something in Australia, like an Australian made. Like I want to buy local. Went on to the internet to have a look for product. And there was nothing. I couldn't find a single hand plane in Australia. No one was making them. No one was selling them. The only ones I could find were these like really, really cheap old school plastic ones. And I was like, man, this is way too fun to not be a thing. And so, at that point I was working as a carpenter. And so I had access to a lot of kind of offcuts from work, and I just pulled together some old reclaimed timbers, nutted out a few different designs in the garden, pissed off a lot of my housemates, creating a lot of crap, and made a few hand planes, took them down to the beach, tested out a few designs, was really kind of loving the idea, but then the real eureka moment came when I made 18 hand planes from reclaimed timbers from the job site over the course of probably 2 or 3 weeks. Kind of stumbled my way through it, learned a lot about the process, and then signed up and got a stall at the markets down in Manly Beach in Sydney. And I had nothing. I had no payment terminal. I just had a table which I hired on the day and just my product laid on the table. No merch, no business cards, no nothing, just a big smiling face and something that I'd made. And I was selling them for $90 each on the day, and I sold every single one.
Wow.
Completely sold out. And I just left that day with the biggest smile on my face, a big wad of cash because I couldn't take any card payments. And one of the guys who I sold one to in the morning, I remember it was just this random hand plane I made of 2 bits of wood with an off cut of a door in the middle. Just he loved the story of it. He went off and had a surf And he came back and he was like, mate, that's the most fun I've ever had in the ocean. And I'm like 45, been surfing all my life. And I was like, that is huge. So I left that day just like, this is it. This is a thing. People love this. People want to buy this. And the feedback is great, not only from my own, but from other people. So let's give it a go. I had no idea about running a business, really, a small business. I knew that I always wanted to. It was always kind of a burning desire of mine. And then all of a sudden I had some fuel for the fire and I ran with it.
Mate, that's awesome. That's like every marketeer's dream. It's like you have a garage sale, you're like, oh, I'm going to make $1,000. No one makes money at those things, but you managed to do it.
Yeah.
Sell your handmade product.
It was great.
What a cool thing. It was pretty shocking when you realised that there wasn't any in Australia. For obviously Australia's got all the coastline and we're all about water sports, but none here.
Well, what I discovered after I kind of did some more research into it was that body surfing was huge in Australia in the 70s and 80s. Everyone body surfed. It was only when surf culture took over and surfboards become small enough that people could carry them themselves that surfing took off and became the super sexy sport that it is, and everyone started surfing and body surfing kind of went underground.
So did they have hand planes in the 70s?
People used to make their own.
Okay.
People used to just cut them out of whatever they could, and they used to use their thongs and cut out some chopping boards and Macca's trays and whatever they could get their hands on to just go for a body surf.
Because I guess when I was at high school, which was late 90s, my mate it was the only, because I've never tried with the hand plane, but I used to bodyboard. And one of my mates had a glove, so it was just like a webbed glove. And when the surf wasn't great, or after the surf session, we'd like dick around with that with the flippers. So much fun.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's just, I feel like every single time you go for a body surf, you have a good time. You always leave with a smile on your face. I can't say that about surfing. It seems to be a lot more ego in surfing and stand-up surfing. Sometimes you can have a bad session, but in body surfing you can't.
I find when I think of bodyboarding to surfing, like the barrier for entry is a lot lower. So you can have fun really quickly.
Yeah.
And also, you can make more. I don't know. I'm not really in the surfing world, but I feel like you can make more out of shitty surf sometimes, or at least being closer to the wave.
Yeah.
It's quite a rush. You can be tucked into a tiny barrel and you're really lying in it and you can feel the rush of it around you. And that's a real thrill. I guess that's the same with the hand wave. It's like on you in it. Even
more so with body surfing because, you can turn a mushy day into something that's super fun. You're very much immersed in the ocean. With a bodyboard, to a degree, but you're still on a board sat on top of it. When you're body surfing, you're very much in the ocean.
It's just rushing under you.
You're flying across the wave surface. It's rushing across your belly. You're just super connected.
So does the hand plane give you a significant amount of buoyancy and ability to catch a wave that you would be otherwise very hard to?
So it doesn't provide buoyancy. A hand plane works. It's called a hand plane. It's because it's a planing device. So once you swam into a wave, you can kind of plant it on the water surface. And as soon as it's planing, you can then apply downward pressure to the hand plane, and that in turn creates lift. So it helps to bring your body up onto the water surface and reduce your drag. So it essentially enhances the body surfing experience. You can definitely body surf without a hand plane, but the hand plane allows you to catch a wave easier, go faster, ride the wave for longer, and use it with a lot more control and steer yourself around.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is it typically done with flippers as well, or you can either way?
Fins really help. So generally what I say, if you're going body surfing, fins will help you catch the wave, hand plane helps you ride it. So the fins give you the speed to catch up with the wave, because you've got to be going the same speed as the wave to catch it. And then once the wave kind of picks you up, the hand plane starts to plane. That's when the hand plane comes in, and then you can really kind of steer yourself around and ride the wave all the way through. But fins are pretty critical. You can definitely do it without it if you stay within your depth. So if you can like kick off the sand and jump into a wave at like a shory, you still get a lot of fun out of that. But if you want to catch a wave from out back or ride it a long distance, then fins become necessary.
Wicked.
But still, it's pretty simple, right? I love the fact that no matter what you do, you just need equipment that can fit in your backpack. It's fins and a hand plane, and that's it. You're good to go.
Yeah, for me, like I really love, well, I like movement. I mean, that's why we're in the gym game, and I like sports. I like really fun things that are simple that you don't need a lot of gear for.
Yeah.
Type of thing. Like that really appeals to me. Like skating for me growing up was just like, just had a deck. And there's so many, it was quite easy to jump on in and do it. And that could just fit in you just carry it down your backpack type of thing, as opposed to like chucking a longboard on the racks. It's easy access.
No, I love that. Like I used to have a motorbike when I first come to Sydney, drive that around. It just lends itself to convenient surfing. Keep something in your backpack. Pre-COVID days, you go on a weekend away just with carry-on luggage. You've got all the surf gear that you'd need to go and get a few barrels, have a great time. Like, just the simplicity of all was a huge attractor for me. And yeah, I think body surfing is very much coming back again now.
So it's popular? Gaining?
So yeah, I started this 8 years ago. And ever since then, year on year, it's been growing bigger and bigger. More and more people are kind of realizing how pure and simple and fun body surfing is. Everyone lives such hectic, busy lives these days. Something that you can, keep in your car, keep in your backpack, do on a whim, just pop down for a few waves, keep it simple. It's super attractive to a lot of people, which is awesome.
Do me a favor, just get more into that when you talk to Paulie, because I'm losing you a little bit.
Right.
I don't want the people to miss anything of what you're saying. But the simplicity of it, that speaks to me a lot, like what you're both saying about like skateboarding. I remember when I did a season in Whistler, like pretty much probably everyone we know. But I remember snowboarding and really enjoying it. And there was a part of me that was like, oh, this is like snowboarding is the thing. But then I thought about it, and it's like you got to have all this gear. You kit it out. You're like immobile. You got to have all the, you got to have the deck, and you got to get on the fucking chairlift. And I remember thinking that time when I had dabbled in surfing, I'm like, man, surfing is so much more simplistic than this. You just got your boardies, you got a board, maybe wearing a rash guard, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
But now I look at surfing and I'm like, it's too much effort. You got to have a board and the wax and shit. But so I can.
There's degrees of simplicity. Yeah. Like I got for my birthday just recently, I got some kite surfing lessons, and I'm dreading that I love it. Because if I love it, like I couldn't think of a more
all the gear
equipment heavy like sport. And yeah, I've recently in the last like 4 or 5 years fell in love with snowboarding as well. But then just the equipment, like it just starts clocking up, and it racks up in dollars and space. And yeah, I'm just like, I'm gonna give it a go, kite surfing, because it does sound awesome. But man,
you're a thrill seeker.
If I love it, I'm like, oh man, like I've already got like golf clubs, surfboards, snowboard gear, fishing gear, like it all, scuba gear, snorkeling gear, like it just all racks up, so keeping it simple.
Just a question on how you use them. When you go out, you just have one plane, is that right?
Yeah, it's a common question, yeah. A lot of people do think you need two, but generally the general rule is if you're going to surf the wave to the left, you'd wear it on your left hand, right for right.
Yep.
But yeah, you only need one. I've tried two, it becomes quite clumsy. It does act as a bit of a swim paddle. So you will see a lot of people who do kind of laps in the pool and some ocean swimming who use kind of small hand paddles to help them swim. We need them to be a little bit bigger than that to actually create the surface area to provide you with enough lift. So they become a bit clumsy if you've got two of them on the go. But yeah, just one is enough.
And how do you swim? Like, how would you swim out when you've got one on? Can you still just do your freestyle stroke?
Yeah, so that goes into the design a lot. When you're body surfing, 80% of what you're doing during the session is swimming. So it has to be able to swim well.
Yeah.
So I very much factored that into the design. So yeah, it's a completely natural swimming stroke. So the board comes out on its edge, goes into the water on its edge, and then you open it for a paddle, and then out on its edge again. But yeah, it helps. It helps with swimming once you get used to it. It's one of those things. It's the same with fins. If you haven't worn fins before in the water, they feel a bit clumsy. A hand plane will always feel a bit unnatural to someone who hasn't used one before, but that soon disappears once they get on a wave and feel the thrill.
I want to get one.
Yeah, me too.
It's got me all amped.
Yeah.
We'll have a jungle session out for sure.
Mate, that'd be cool. Tell me then, tell us how it went from this kernel where you're like, fuck, this is a thing, to now being what it is, where what I see when I look at your brand is this huge emphasis on using recycled materials. And you've got this whole production line that sort of factors in that, and that seems to be at the forefront of the business. How did you get, what were the steps to get it to that point? How did it become what it is?
Yeah, so I originally started making everything from timber. So I handmade every single one myself. I got myself a workshop in Sydney, and for about 3 years, I was in there like 5 days a week, kind of churning out product and building the business on the side. And it got to the point where my full-time job, like 40 hours a week, was making the product. And then I was trying to sell it on the side and run the business and grow the business and stuff. And it was just totally unsustainable time-wise to do that. And as much as I loved being in the workshop, putting on a podcast, some music, dancing around, because it became so automated to me after doing it for so long, I could make them without even thinking. But it was just, I couldn't grow the business if I kept that up. So I knew I needed to scale up somehow. So I explored my different options, and plastic production was always an option. Like, I knew it was fast, I knew it was cheap, but it just went against every single bone in my body to contemplate making, especially an ocean-based product out of virgin plastics. So I was like, if I'm going to go down the plastic route, I'm going to explore recycled plastics. And then I was like, well, if it's going to be used in the ocean, I might as well go down the ocean plastic route. I'd love to kind of deal with some of that problem. So first step was to outsource my timber production. So I had a few trips over to Bali to do a few kind of surf comps, and met a few different people whilst I was over there, through kind of a friend of a friend. Got connected up with someone over there who ran a woodworking shop who made kind of furniture and photo frames and that kind of stuff. So I went over to visit them. And essentially, I've created all these kind of jigs, timber jigs, to manufacture the product kind of consistently. Once I was getting into some kind of decent stores and stuff, I needed a consistent product. It couldn't just be, handmade with all these different variances and stuff in them. So yeah, I just basically replicated my workshop over there, set up all my jigs. We got in a bunch of tools that I've been using, sent them over there. And then just had this kind of built this great relationship with this team. And unfortunately, that only lasted about 2 or 3 years. And then we've recently changed during COVID to another manufacturer, and I haven't been able to go over yet. So that's another story, which we'll get to probably later maybe. But yeah, so I outsourced the production of my timber hand planes. And I remember getting that first shipment in on the boat. We had a pallet load of hand planes come in. And like when I got them and unpacked them, they were good. And I just looked at them in the amount of hours that I would have spent making these things. And I've got a whole pallet load of them in my workshop already made. They just needed to put handles on. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, what am I going to do with all my time?
So satisfying.
Yeah. It did get a while to get to that point. Like, we had a lot of to and fro, good 12 months of sampling and getting it right. But yeah, I remember getting that first shipment in and was like, that's like a year of my work, of me slugging myself out at the thing to get that many.
How many on a pallet roughly?
About 1,600.
Wow.
So I could make about 50 a week.
Yep.
By myself, like over the space of a week. Each one would take about a week to make, just because it needs like sanding, varnishing, and everything. But I do a batch of like 50.
Yeah.
But yeah, turns out with a team of professional guys doing it around the clock, much more than just one person, they can make a lot more, a lot quicker. So that was super satisfying. And then I had all this time then to kind of focus on my next step, which was, I want to scale up. It was still slow. It was still like a 6-month turnaround on a production run for the timber ones. And I knew that I was started to talk to some bigger brands. We was chatting to the likes of Rebel Sports, and I was like, if these guys jump on board and they want to put in a big order, it's going to be 6 months before I can get it out to them. And like, then they want stuff now. They want it quick. And I just wouldn't have been able to keep up with that stuff if those kind of big accounts came along. So I knew I needed to scale up. So yeah, plastics was something I knew was going to be quick. Super naive going into it, thinking I would just buy some ocean plastics and stick it in a mold and make hand planes, and that'll be it. And I remember writing it all down from my kind of from concept to production. And my initial plan was 3 months. Like I was like, it'll be fine. Like everything's gonna be done in Australia. It's like super quick. I'll just get it done in 3 months. But 3 years in the end to get my first official product out of the mold.
Wow. And I'm guessing it cost a lot of money over those 3 years?
Yeah, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of stress, but a lot of inspiration too. Like I think my naivety played massively to my favor. So when I started exploring the options of ocean plastics, I first just went on, tried to buy it and couldn't find it anywhere. I wanted cleaned, processed ocean plastics that we could put straight into an injection molder. And I had no idea about plastics production.
Is injection molder what I imagine, where it melts down the material and then it pumps it into a mold and then it sets?
You can imagine, right? It's actually a phenomenal machine. It's like an 8 meter long machine. One half of it is just a massive hydraulic brake. The other half is this huge corkscrew in a tube, and you put like shredded plastic in one end. The corkscrew's heated up, and it sends all the plastic through and melts it as it goes through. And then the force of it just injects it into a mold at one end. The two clamp together, and the brake's just stopping the other half moving. It squirts it all into the mold. Water rapidly gets sprayed around inside the mold through all these tubes, rapidly cools it, then it pops open and the product falls out.
Cool.
But yeah, I just wanted to buy ocean plastics and I couldn't find it anywhere. And it was becoming quite frustrating, but I was aware that other companies had used similar stuff overseas to make similar products. There's a company in the US that had made skateboards out of recycled fishing nets, which was nylon. So I explored, first of all, I wanted to use plastic bottles. They're like one thing I hate the most, single-use plastic bottles. So I was like, I use that, and that's a plastic called PET. Soon discovered after talking to a few manufacturers that was going to be near on impossible to injection mold recycled PET. Generally, they're blown mold, and they're kind of, once they've been blown mold, it's kind of much easier to recycle them into fabrics, make kind of like recycled polyester kind of material. So that was struck off. And then these other guys were making stuff out of nylon, which I knew had been done because they were already doing it. And so I knew it was possible. It was just a matter of trying to get people to do it. But then I discovered that nylon sinks in water. It's denser than water, seawater. That's why they use it for fishing nets.
Right.
So I was like, I can't really use or make a product from a material that sinks in the ocean when it's designed to be used in the ocean. My worst nightmare would be that it would be lost and then sunk, and then just another piece of plastic to be washed around in the ocean for millennia. So then that was struck off, and then what I was left with was all the mixed hard plastics, which are the likes of HDPE and polypropylene, but they're like your kind of bottle caps, toothbrushes, single-use cutlery, all the general rubbish that you see washed up on the beach.
Yeah.
80% of that is kind of your HDPE and polypropylene. So then that was kind of what I was left with, this kind of mixed mess. So then I just had to find people that were willing to work with that material. So yeah, I have ultimately set up an entire supply chain, but all I've essentially done is connected people that were doing great stuff already together. So how it worked was I came across this organization called EcoBarge Clean Seas, and they're based up in the Whitsundays. And they go out and have done for the last 10 years on a barge and clean up all the beaches and islands within their vicinity around the Great Barrier Reef. And they pull it all back in, they sort it all for their data records. They need to provide the data in order to secure some of their funding. That's how they kind of finance the whole thing. But then ultimately the material just gets sent to landfill.
Oh, wow.
And it breaks their hearts because they pull it out of one environment and stick it in another. Like better out of the ocean, but still it's got no use, and they spend all that time sorting it, and then it just gets chucked away. So discovered those guys. They were collecting a lot of material and were desperate to find a use for it. So I was like, bingo, like we need people like you. We need someone who's collecting it. Done. The next stage in the supply chain was the missing link in many ways, and it's the processing side of it. Because there was no demand for the material, no one was processing it. No one was collecting it. They were sorting it, a lot of people, and for data stuff, but no one was actually washing it and shredding it down and getting it into a usable material that someone like me could buy. And that was something we needed to set up. So there was an organization called the Plastic Collective that I came across at like a sustainability event. And they were offering up these remote plastic recycling machines to help remote indigenous communities kind of deal with their own plastic waste locally. A lot of recycling plants are just these big mega places that, they get sent all their curbside material, but some of the local communities that don't have access to a lot of that, get overwhelmed by their own waste. So they were offering up these little remote recycling machines, and I was like, this is perfect. Like, we need something that can just kind of shred it. They had all this educational material around sorting it and washing it, and so we partnered up with those guys, and they connected up with EcoBarge, sent them some of their machines, got funding for it, and all of a sudden they had a way to process the material that they were collecting. So that was another huge tick. And that, to be honest, that was the last tick in the list. It took me the longest, but it's the second stage in the supply chain. When
you say it took you the longest, is the time spent at that stage of the business in you researching to try and find organizations that are doing this stuff and that you can even get a conversation with? And
no, those two organizations, EcoBarge and Plastic Collective, was super keen. It was just a matter of trying to get them connected up and try to actually make something happen. That was the longest stretch in that partnership. The other one was finding a manufacturer. So there was a lot of issues with ocean plastics in that they're highly contaminated. There's a lot of extra material in there that isn't necessarily plastic. There's a lot of shell fragments and salt and little bits of steel and all this random tiny little fragments of stuff. And when that gets put through an injection molding machine, mega expensive giant machines like I talked about before, it all has to get forced through this tiny little hole, and anything that blocks it up jeopardizes the entire machine.
Right.
So people are really adverse to putting this kind of material through their machines. So I called well over 100 different manufacturers in Australia.
Wow.
I was just on a mission to find someone who would work with me to experiment on this, because I knew it could be done. I had this I just knew it could be done. There was just no one willing. Everyone who I spoke to, I faced so many no's, don't bothers, it's going to be too hard, it'll be too expensive, it'll never work, you'll never find anyone to work with. And that just fueled my fire so much. I was like, I know this can be done. There's got to be someone out there. So I actually got turned down by the manufacturer we ended up using originally. Called them, emailed them, told them my story and what I wanted to do, and they said, look, we love what you're trying to do, but it's not going to work for us. So then I went to all these different plastic events, recycling events, just trying to broaden my network in that space. And the director of this company did a speech during this kind of did a big presentation during this conference. And his whole conference speech was around, we just need more people that want to make recycled plastic products. That creates the pull through. We just need more people with more ideas, more products, and that will help the whole system. And that was the premise of his entire talk. So as soon as he came down off the stage, it's funny, all these events I was going to, I was like the only one not in a suit. It was hilarious. I'd go there in like my flannel shirts, and they'd all be there suited and booted, and it's high end kind of.
Still got sea salt in your hair.
Yeah. So I just went and cornered him as soon as he got off the stage, and was like, "Hey, look, my name's Rikki. This is kind of what I've been trying to do. I want to make this product out of ocean plastics." And he was super inspired by it. He was like, "That's such a good idea. Like, I know that it's going to be difficult, but it can be done. I'm sure it can be done." And we agreed to work together on it. So it turned out like the idea had never got to him. It only made it to the front desk.
Wow.
Which I guess happened in so many instances. The people would actually be doing the work, who were in charge of the machines, probably even never got to see my emails or hear my calls. It just got rejected at the first hurdle. So yeah, he agreed to work with us, and without him, I think the whole thing would have fell apart, because I needed that experimental phase. I needed someone with knowledge in the industry, access to machines. So we played around with some kind of material that we had managed to source in small amounts, made up like a crappy little like mold just to kind of make a basic shape to see if we could get this material through the machine and injection mold it into something that was decent. And then it got to a point where we couldn't really experiment properly without a proper mold. And at this point, I chucked a fair amount of money into it. And the mold was going to cost about $20,000 to buy, just the mold itself. And I'd already chucked far too much money and time at this thing. And we had about that saved in our kind of house deposit account. And so I remember like reaching this point, and he was like, Mark was his name, the director of this company. He was like, "Look, we just need a mold. We need a decent, proper mold to actually make this experiment work." And I was like, "Oh man, like I need proof that it does work before I buy the mold." And it was just like this like stalemate. So I remember going home, and it was a difficult conversation, talking to my wife. I was like, how like we want to save for a house and stuff. How about we buy a $20,000 lump of metal instead and hope it works? So she's always been super supportive of this whole thing. She wasn't over the moon about spending kind of our joint savings. I'd always managed to use the business's earnings to put back into it to this point. But here all of a sudden I need to just pull 20 grand out of our personal savings and give it a go. And I had no idea if it was going to really work. But I had to do it just to trial. So that's what we did. We chucked every penny we had at this mold at that point. Made the mold. That was a whole process in itself. I had no idea what I was doing, who I was working with, and I ended up going with an Australian company because I needed that kind of connection to someone I could talk to on the phone. Most molds are made overseas, China, but I needed someone to give me confidence because I had no idea about it. Made the mold, got a whole bunch of material processed through EcoBarge and the plastic collectives machine. Sent down a big bunch of material on a truck, got there, had the mold set up, we mixed it up, we created a recipe over the kind of previous 12 months around the right kind of mix of material to use, the different types and what else we needed to include in it. Made up the recipe, put it through the machine, and turned out 1,000 units, in the course of like over a day. And it was a roaring success, and like I just burst into tears. I was like, I couldn't believe it actually worked. And I'd created, 1,000 units in a day, and I was like, this is the future. Like, this is how it's going to be for us. This is where the company's going to be at. Let's just scale this production supply chain up.
Mate, how cool is that?
It was heavy, and that was like, it was a solid 3-year process to get to that point. And then it was a case of trying to brand it, market it,
the other stuff.
I had to just spend all that time trying to learn how to produce it. But I made a lot of good friends, good connections along the way, along that story. Like, a lot of people knew about what I was trying to achieve, and I attended a lot of events, sustainability events, recycling, plastic events, everything. And I built up a pretty good network. So I was pretty well supported when I came to kind of being like, hey, finally done it. And everyone would, it was stoked for me, which was awesome. And then so partnered up with an agency and built the brand out and put it to market.
Unbelievable. There's a lot to pick apart there, and I want to know about some of these, some of the challenges you would have faced. Looking back at what it's taken you to get to where you are, would you do it again?
No. I think that's what saved me, my naivety of not knowing how hard it was going to be and not knowing kind of how long it was going to take. Just got me through the daily grind of working on it. And I wasn't really paying myself any money during that time. I was just putting it all back into it, but just thinking that I could get it done in the short term kind of got me through. But it's a battle that I face now. I now know that if I want to do anything new and challenging again, I know that I can do it, but I know how hard it is. So now I have experience in battling through. That's another whole thing to deal with. But I don't. At that stage in my life, if I knew how hard it was going to be, I don't think I would have done it. Now I probably will give it a go, but I'm aware of difficulty.
Yeah.
But I would have chosen something a bit easier.
So the whole time you're still manufacturing the wooden ones over in Bali?
Yes, so that's remained a constant this whole time.
Okay, throughout that process.
Timber ones were kind of where my heart lied at the beginning. We did some great stuff with it. I had the workshop. We used to run community workshops as well. So we'd get people coming in, groups of 5, and I'd take them through the shaping process throughout the course of a day, and they would leave with a hand plane that they'd made themselves at the end of the day. And that kind of stuff was like super heartwarming. Mm. Everyone absolutely loved it. And it was a great time. And the timber ones have brought a lot of love to me and to the business, and I had a great time building that side of it out. And they've remained a staple since the very beginning. But the bad fish, the ocean plastic hand plane, is definitely what's taken our business to kind of the next level.
Well, you needed to upscale it so you could provide the joy to more people.
Well, that was the kind of drive too. It's funny, like as much as I want to market the product, body surfing itself is still extremely niche. So half of my marketing stuff is around just marketing body surfing.
Yeah,
I can't sell a product if people don't know what body surfing is. I've been pushing the body surfing scene from the very beginning as well, and building out kind of a strong community in that. And that's been a huge kind of passion driver for me, watching that grow. We have been, up until COVID, running kind of annual body surfing events and competitions, and gaining a fair bit of media from that, which has been awesome. The media we got from the Ocean Plastics hand plane has done wonders for body surfing, because we won competitions with the National Geographic, with Amazon, so some big kind of names, but for the recycled plastic supply chain. And so body surfing has kind of got kind of the marketing boost just from being included in all of that PR that we've got from all that amazing stuff we've achieved through the ocean plastic supply chain. So it's kind of boosted both. Body surfing is still something that I'm continually pushing and marketing and growing, and we're just going along for the ride.
Has that supply chain been leveraged by other products or other brands? Like, have other organizations been able to access what you've created?
That is my goal. Not yet. Unfortunately, the supply chain that we've got set up, because we've been growing quickly, it's only really servicing our needs. It's relatively small scale. So I would love to be able to get it to a position where I can, on-sell the material to other people who want to include it into their products, and also utilize it for additional products that I want to manufacture. So I've been working on that for the last couple of years, trying to upscale that supply chain stuff and make it much more industrial, on a much more industrial scale. So that's something that's been ongoing, and we're working rapidly towards, hopefully. Because if we can set that up, then it opens it up to everyone, which would be my goal. But I think from what it is, quite small scale what we're doing, in that it only services my business. But I have said from the start that I love the fact that this product is hopefully viewed as a positive case study for utilizing ocean plastics. Like if someone can see what we've done with the bad fish and go, that's cool, I want to do something similar. That's like the ultimate goal for me. If people can be inspired by it and go out and try something different and push the limits, and maybe in the recycled plastic space, but maybe in something else as well. And also so the mix that we use for the bad fish, we're using 33% ocean plastics and then 66% curbside collected plastics. So the stuff that people put into their recycling bins at home. And that stuff we do just buy. And we're pretty open about that and pretty transparent about that. We buy that material, it's processed on an industrial scale from curbside collections, and it's predominantly things like milk bottle cartons. And that's readily available. So I think, what I've kind of pushed a lot is if we can make these products using all this highly contaminated ocean plastics and achieve what we've achieved with that, there's no real excuse why other people aren't utilizing this readily available, much purer, much cleaner, much cheaper post-consumer recycled plastics that's already out there. So just get amongst it and start using that instead of buying virgin.
I wanted to ask about the plastic recycling piece, because occasionally you see something that makes you think that we're going to sort of crack the code on all of this single-use plastic stuff. I remember seeing a video going around on Facebook years ago of I think there's a guy in Japan who invented a machine, and you just put plastic into it and it converts the plastic back to oil. And then the oil can be used in, motors and stuff. And I got no idea if there's any credibility to the video whatsoever, but it's one of those things you watch and you go, oh wow, that's optimistic. Like, amazing. You can throw your shopping bags into it and your coffee cup lids. But then you see something like, what was the show? ABC, Craig Rucastle, on the truth about recycling.
Oh, yes.
And showing that a whole bunch of the stuff that we attempt to recycle, we've got a good system for it, supposedly domestic recycling in Australia, but a lot of it ends up in landfill. And you're like, oh, well, that's depressing. Like, what is the actual state of the recycling piece? Is what you're doing just a very small drop in the right, or a very small step in the right direction? Or is there actually a shift globally or even domestically here where the tide's changing on that? No pun intended.
We are, I'm very aware that we are offering a very small solution to a small part of the problem. But I just hope that it inspires much larger change. I think one thing that's helped the Australian recycle industry is there was the ban on exporting our waste to China that came into force a couple of years ago. And that's kind of forced Australia to deal with their waste domestically. We used to just export it. Everything used to be kind of collected, baled up, and then would sell it to China.
What would they do with it?
They'd recycle it.
Right.
They'd recycle it and make it into new stuff, but much cheaper than what we could do it over here. So we used to just do that, and that was Australia's way. We just ship it overseas. But then China started getting a lot more material than they could handle because they were buying it from everywhere, and the Australian stuff was, pretty contaminated. It wasn't as pure as what they wanted. So they put a ban on any material coming in from Australia. So all of a sudden we just had all this material that was just getting stockpiled because we didn't have the infrastructure to deal with it. And since then there's been a large amount of headway made in recycling plastics on an industrial scale. But it's still a long way to go. And I'm not entirely across the kind of domestic waste recycling within Australia, but it's making moves because we have to, because the waste crisis is becoming too much in terms of the amount of waste that we've actually got in Australia now because we can't ship it anywhere. But yeah, our timing worked out quite well in that when we released the bad fish, it kind of coincided with that War on Waste ABC show. And that really made people aware of the situation in Australia and what problem. We had a big problem at home. It wasn't something that we could just ship overseas anymore. And that's one thing I've loved about this whole thing is, we're entirely, the ocean plastic supply chain is entirely Australian. We use Australian waste, we use Australian suppliers and processors and collectors and manufacturers, and I'm an Australian brand. And yeah, the ocean plastic supply chain is still the only operational Australian ocean plastic supply chain in existence. There's no other people in Australia are manufacturing products from ocean plastics, but it's imported from overseas. It's just expensive to set up the infrastructure to process it here and deal with our own waste.
So on that, and having people take to using that supply chain and it growing, what do you need? Do you need? Well, it's expensive, so you need money. Do you need demand? Do you need government support?
It needs a large amount of machinery, a large amount of space to house that machinery, but machinery is still like experimental in terms of you need these kind of high-end purifiers to clean out the material and make it usable for somebody else.
So I guess you need people who want to use it, so that someone would create a plant and build those machines and invest in it.
That's the catch-22, right?
Yeah, because no one knows yet.
There's no real demand for it because it's not available.
And you're
but
one
it's not
example
available because there's no demand for it.
Right.
So yeah, we're just showcasing what can be done, which is what I hope will inspire other people. But yeah, we're working around some hopefully pretty large grants and things at the moment to get that set up. But it just needs to be done. It needs to be set up and operational for then people to wake up and be like, this material's there, we can just buy it, great. So then someone like me, hopefully with a much larger business coming out, when they go, I just want to make it out of ocean plastics, I'll just buy it. They can go online and go, great, someone's selling it, I'll buy it.
As you said, like the laws changing, the exports of plastic from here, that's like something that is a real catalyst, which pushes things in the right direction. You kind of feel like in the future it would take something like, the crisis reaches a tipping point, or some sort of law changes, or there's a disaster or something like that happens in the reef that pushes all the attention, and the attention gets to the politicians and the policy changes or something like that.
That's definitely the case at the moment, yeah. With that export ban, it's inspired a lot and has forced a lot of action in a good way. So I'm optimistic.
Cool.
Talk to me about you mentioned you wouldn't do it again. And I remember chatting to a guy years ago. I had a wild idea for a product I wanted to create, like a machine. And I was talking to my cousin about it, cousin Emma. She might be listening. Shout out, cousin Em. And she said, I know a guy. He invented an espresso machine. And it's done really well. And she said, I could put you in touch with him if you want. And I was like, yeah, mad. And I chatted to the guy and he's like, what do you want to do? And I told him my idea and he said, awesome. And I was like, well, what do you think? And he said, mate, I'll tell you what. If I knew what I knew now about what it's taken me to get this thing onto the market, he's like, no fucking chance I'd do it again. He said, it's been the hardest decade of my life. And I was like, that was all I needed to hear. I never wanted to chase it bad enough. But, that idea of having an idea and then putting the time into developing it and making it a business, it's the story of small businesses, right? Whether it's gyms or it's hand planes or it's, someone wants to run a corner store. It's like you got to take that plunge at some point. Yeah.
And I think for me, especially in a lot of small business, I would never have got to where I've got with it if I didn't love it. I have such a deep passion for body surfing, but also kind of doing my part in sustainability and giving back, and it's just kind of built into me. And if I didn't love it and really want it, I wouldn't have been able to get through. There were so many times, as it is with any small business, where it's just so easy to just give up and just stop and be like, you know what, this is just too hard. I can't do this anymore. But I was like, I want to make body surfing as big as it should be, and get as many people in and enjoying the ocean as it deserves. And if that takes me pushing this whole recycled plastics supply chain to new levels, then that's what I'm going to do. And yeah, I think with anything, especially like the gym too, if you guys didn't love movement and getting people moving, and it'd be so hard to run a gym. And you need that passion if you're going to start something.
What talk to me about what some of those those hurdles that you face are, and like not even necessarily like some of the emotional stuff, because for people listening, they're like, oh, like he's in a workshop, he's, you know, he did the markets, it's great, he had a bunch of cash, then he's doing the community workshops, and then, you know, you're hooking up with people in the Wit Sundays. It all sounds quite nice.
Yeah.
What's the dark side of this whole journey?
To be honest, most of it was financial. You know, I came to Australia with not much, and I didn't have much kind of wealth behind me. So to start a business, it was always going to be grown organically. The business itself funded the entire expansion of the business. So every kind of dollar that it would earn, I would chuck back into it. And I took like a massive pay cut, and, you know, was working part-time, a couple of days a week in a surf store, just to kind of keep the dollars rolling over so I could fund this whole passion project. And then it was just convincing people that, you know, I was onto a good thing and it was going to be great and one day it'll work and it'll be good. And everyone's just like, man, like, why don't you just get a job? But no, I was determined. And yeah, I think that's kind of when I broke down, because I did have this kind of deep belief in myself that I could do this and get this done. And that got me through most of it. But yeah, I think, to be honest, most of the stresses for me were financial ones, when the bank accounts weren't looking great, you know, and we'd have, you know, randomly with any sort of business, things can affect you out of the blue that you don't realize. You know, your revenue drops that you don't expect, or your forecasting isn't quite spot on, and you know, you get up to all these hurdles where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to make it to the end of the month, or I don't know how I'm going to buy this bunch of material, or, you know, I don't know how I'm going to pay the retainer on my agency this month. And that kind of stuff adds a lot of strain. But it's just those glory moments when you kind of sign up a new big account, or, you know, you produce the first production run out of the machine you've been working on for 3 years. Like all that stuff, like, far outweighed that when it happened. Just in the times where nothing was really moving, and, you know, nothing was kind of going in the right direction. And then you've got that financial squeeze as well. You're like, I could just go back to being a carpenter. And that was also a big pain point. It was so easy for me to do that. It was go back into my wife's family business and just kind of earn good money again doing carpentry. And I was, you know, just squeezed. But no, passion, knowledge that I could get it done, and a love for body surfing kind of got me through.
Did it ever put any strain on your relationship?
Only indirectly through finances.
Yeah.
No, my wife Lucy, she's amazing. She's kind of as passionate, if not more passionate, around kind of sustainability, and that's been her whole career path too. And she's always supported it from the very, very beginning. But it's just when, you know, it's an idea in my head, I can kind of see the vision, and she has faith that, you know, my vision is correct, and, you know, my faith in myself is justified. But then when you start to see the kind of dollars disappear, and, you know, you're chucking it all into an idea, that adds a bit of strain anywhere. But no, not really. And then if anything, it kind of has solidified us as a complete team and unit, you know, because, you know, I wouldn't have been able to get through this whole thing without her support. And in those darker times, when they're like, you know what does it really matter? You know, if we're going to look back in 10 years' time, and, you know, you had to go and get another job, like, is it going to be the worst thing? Just go for it. And, you know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We're going to be fine. And you need that kind of pep talk sometimes. So yeah, and in the end, achieving it together very much as a team has kind of solidified us as a rock solid unit.
It's beautiful, man. It really is. It's yeah, I think it's everyone's relationship's different, you know, and to be able to have that part, like to be able to have the sort of partnership in a business sense, or the support from your, you know, from the person you're married to or partnered with, whatever. It's not always necessarily there. So the fact that it is, and that you know you've kind of broken through to a stage, I'm sure with your business, there's still heaps of parts of it that don't work as efficiently as you like, and it's not like,
of course, it's
not always smooth sailing. It's another pun for you, but but you know, it more or less, like, you've reached a point where it's like, okay,
yeah.
I don't know. Do you feel like you're at a point of relative stability now?
For the last, so we launched the Bad Fish in 2019. And after that first year, within 6 months, we'd made all the money back on the expenses I'd outlaid over the last few years to set it all up.
Wow.
And so I completely broke even on all the stuff I'd outlaid, put the money back into our savings account. And so ever since then, it's been relatively stable. But then it's just a case of now, we've been growing year on year since. COVID came along. We got very lucky in COVID. I'm extremely grateful for that. We're one of the businesses that did very well out of it. People just screaming to get out and do something in nature and be outdoors and start a new hobby and online shopping. So we did extremely well out of that. And I'm just grateful that, for the last few years, there's been a lot less financial stress. It's just about growth and security now. I really want to make it a sustainable business economically. So when we do hit these kind of random declines in business, whether it is a COVID or something similar, continuity is important now. So we're branching out. We're launching it in the US this year, which would be incredible for us, hopefully. The issue with running a surf product is that it's entirely seasonal. For us, it's based around Christmas, summertime, people are at the beach, it's sunny. And then in the winter, it kind of really tails off, and it's just the die-hard kind of surf community that might be interested in buying. But around the summertime, Christmas time, the gift market is massive, so we're really pushing that. But the beauty of launching in the US and pushing it over there is we'll have back-to-back summers. So it'll be Australian summer to US summer. And so we should have a year-round kind of constant revenue stream, which would make things a lot cruisier, a lot safer, and a lot less stressful in those winter times, because on our off season, we're outlaying a lot of costs, we're buying a lot of products, we're building up stockpiles, but we're not really selling much.
Yeah.
So it's a big spending phase, and then you recoup it all back, and then some in the summer months. But with the US, hopefully, if it all goes to plan this year, that should kind of add a lot of security, which is exciting.
Would you be shipping your product to the US, or would you be establishing the supply chain there and manufacturing locally?
Initially, we're shipping product over.
Yep.
And that's the way we're going to kind of start at the moment, with a third-party logistics company over there, and I will still run it all from here. And we're going to launch that and try it for a season, and then reassess at the end of that whether if it does really, really well, we might look at building out that supply chain over there and getting product manufactured domestically in the US, and then get someone to manage it over there. But I want to build it up to a point where it's kind of attractive to someone in the first place to go. It sells in the US, resonates with people here. There's a massive market over there, much bigger than Australia.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting.
And it's kind of same, like culturally, it's the same, like the surf group's one group.
Very similar culture, just a lot more people.
Yeah.
So it should go quite well. And I think that's what's really amazing actually about body surfing is the global community side of things. There's so much love for the sport. I personally haven't met a bad body surfer as in kind of personal traits. Everyone who loves body surfing just seems to be like pure kind of, happy, go lucky, don't really have much ego, just get in there and have a blast, have some fun and share it with friends. And that's definitely brought me a lot out of the business, is building out that community aspect and being a part of it and watch it grow.
Can I ask about the transition there, which is you went from being the craftsman with an idea in the workshop, making the planes, selling them, being able to sell it from the creator's point of view. And obviously that's so compelling for someone when you meet someone who's used their hands to make the thing that they're trying to, you always buy it, whether it's salami or it's fucking hand planes, right? But then your business grows, and this is relevant to, I think about, the gym here, ask what we're going through and what happens in the evolution of any growing small business. You generally stop being the craftsperson and you move in towards like like you said, like now you're looking at attacking a new market. There's supply chain things, there's relationship management, all those things. How have you navigated that? Has that been something that was inherent to you, or were you kind of finding your feet as you went?
The whole process for me has been trial and error and finding my feet as I go along. But I've tried to keep the brand as human as possible. It's still just me. It's kind of built around stuff that I love and on my passion. And I'd hate for someone to come along, discover our brand, and not kind of discover who or what's behind it. It's not just like an online brand that's just got no kind of human aspect to it. I want it to be a human kind of connection. And so emails that they get are directly from me and created by me, even if it's an automated one. And it has my kind of tone and stuff across it. That has been a conscious thing, just try to keep that. I don't want it to be like, generically from
corporate
planes or whatever. It's always been like from me. And it may not always be me. It may be somebody else down the line, but I always want to keep that kind of human aspect. I don't want to be considered a robot on a website that sells product. I want to be humans selling to humans. And we try to incorporate that into all of our branding and our packaging and all that kind of stuff. It's you're dealing with a human being, which is important to us.
Yeah, looking at it, like looking at the website and stuff, that it comes through. It's really cool. Like it's very refreshing.
Can I ask you about the marketing? Because like, amazing story. It's really inspirational, and like you told me that in the past in the gym, but I hadn't heard it in this much detail. A lot of little hurdles along the way, and also just, it's pretty incredible. The product that's in the ocean, it's taken from plastics, the stuff that you went through. Is it hard to market it, and how are you marketing it currently? Because to me, it seems like it sells itself as long as you tell that story.
That is the trick of it at the moment. I end up doing a lot of events, a lot of markets, a lot of exhibitions and such, and so I get to talk to people a lot face to face and sell the product. And like you said, Joey, like if someone's there and they feel your passion and you're the creator, it's such an easy sell. So we've got to really try and get that message across. But yeah, I would always sell people on the concept of body surfing first, especially with the new Badfish hand plane. People love the idea of body surfing. It sounds so pure and romantic when like they haven't really kind of thought of it before, like gliding across the surface of the ocean with just your body. That's amazing. And it is. And so it's a really kind of easy story to tell. And then they're immediately kind of caught by that. And then throwing on top the fact that, you can help clean up Australian beaches, pull some plastic out of the Great Barrier Reef, and feel guilt-free about the product that you've bought, and go and use it and have some fun in the ocean, knowing you've helped clean the ocean. That resonates very well with our customer base. So that's the kind of messages that we put, like body surfing is great, and you get to help save the planet. We kind of use that tagline that with the Badfish, you get to body surf and clean the ocean at the same time, and it's that simple.
Had an idea.
Tell me.
No, I was just thinking about it before. It seems like the story's so compelling, and I'd love to know it in more detail along the way. And I can't help but think it'd be really awesome as a documentary. And I think my mind's just thinking about it'd be quite, well, I have no idea, but it sounds like something that producers could get funding for quite easily because of the two stories that it's kind of telling. And there's multiple narratives in there about you, and then there's the bigger picture and the thing that you're solving. And it's one of those type of narratives where the job's not done and the mission's not done, but you're the little guy making, that mark, and you're trying for it to catch on.
Making big waves.
Joey, that's number 3.
Yeah.
And you're a compassionate, you're a charismatic guy that speaks really well, and I think it'd be like unreal to see that on Netflix.
I think we've got like 3 unfinished documentaries.
There you go.
happening.
So
it's always
happening.
like someone comes along with experience in kind of, documentary making and are super inspired by our story. I'm like, man, I want to tell this story. I need to film this. And we do a bunch of filming and we go surfing and they're like super great. And then it's like time drags on and they're kind of like, I'm picking up this extra work. And we haven't had the funds to kind of fund an entire documentary to be made. And then it kind of fizzles out. And then the next person comes along and they're like, this is so great. And I'm like, yeah, great. Let's do some filming. And I got plenty of footage. You can pull that in if you want.
Fuck, we know that story.
Yeah. So that's happened a lot. So I think I've got like 3 unfinished documentaries. But we've been on TV numerous times and just exposing ourselves on the screen does wonders for us. We've done quite well out of being on screen. So I think a documentary, I agree, would be amazing. And I'd love to just capture this. Like I have done a few podcasts telling the story. I do like telling the story. Like it inspires me again every time I go through it.
Because you get to go back.
And I would love to just capture it all in like a nice, neat, concise documentary. Just to have it there would be incredible. So I'd love to do that one day.
I feel like if you found the right people, like say someone came to you to try and make a documentary, and this is just me thinking, at some stage in the business, maybe it's when you're attacking the US or you're at a point where you want this facade of just to have the story told, is trying to find the producers who are experienced enough that can go get the funding, and they know how to get the funding because the pitch is there and the funding comes because of climate change is an issue right now and yada yada. That would be incredible.
Yeah, no, it's definitely
we know some
on my to-do list to get that done. But yeah, I just love this. It's the body surfing has given me so much. Like body surfing got me down my fitness route too. It's the reason I go to the gym a lot now. I got massively into body surfing. The beauty around the fact that body surfing is kind of a relatively untold underground sport is that the limits of body surfing haven't really been pushed. And so we, a group of us in Sydney, I brought together a number of body surfers to, as ambassadors for my brand. And through that kind of just, became very good mates and all very competent, incredible oceanmen. And we've been continually pushing the limits of body surfing within Australia. And we started taking ourselves to some crazy waves. Once you're up and planing on a wave, there's not much difference between you and a bodyboarder. You just go a little bit slower. So you can surf some pretty massive waves. I mean, we've been pushing it and riding waves that have never been body surfed, and that's still a thing. You can't really say that about many waves for surfing or bodyboarding anymore because almost everything has been bodyboarded or surfed, but not everything has been body surfed. So we started pushing the limits on what we would body surf, and it turns out if you start doing some big ocean stuff, like you need some serious fitness to kind of cope with some of those situations. And you experience some pretty large wipeouts and joints are pretty exposed during those kind of moments. So kind of getting some joint security and strength in there, building lung capacity and breath hold capacity. That kind of really forced me down the fitness route. I turned 30 and my body was slightly breaking down. I was playing soccer, body surfing some crazy waves and getting knocked about all over the place and feeling like not comfortable in some kind of gnarly ocean scenarios, being held underwater. And I was like, man, I'm not going to last forever if I don't do something about this. So yeah, that sent me down on the fitness journey, and led me to you guys. So now I'm training here and building out my stuff so that I can actually do what I want to do and not get hurt too much.
It's a really great motivation to stay healthy.
Well, yeah, if I wanted to do the things that I want to do, then I have to be fit to do it. And so that's kind of where the inspiration come to get back into the gym and build out my fitness.
Can you tell us of some of the biggest waves and the spot that was at?
Yeah, I think that the heaviest wave, it's a pretty world famous one in big wave surfing, is Cape Solander out in Kurnell and Cronulla. It's called Hours. They held back in 2016, which kind of really put it on the map. Cape Fear competition where they have brought big wave surfers from all over the world, and they were towing them in on jet skis on this massive swell in 2016. And it's just this huge barreling wave, kind of, 20, 30 foot faces and beyond, but thick ocean swell. It comes, the swell comes from extremely deep water and hits a very shallow shelf, and just like the weight of the ocean just folds over into like barrels with like a lip on the barrel that's kind of like 6-7 foot thick, just walls of water. And it's unbelievably thrilling and exciting and terrifying, especially when you're just kind of body surfing it, because you feel so insignificant and you're just trying to like tame the beast. But man, it is addictive. It is so much fun.
Is that it's quite that breaks quite close to a rock face, doesn't it?
Yeah, that adds to its scary factor. So it's no more than 20 meters from the rocks, and it runs kind of pretty much along the rocks. But on certain days, if there's kind of some north in the swell, it lands on the rocks.
Yeah.
So you got to like start to pick your waves and choose them and know which ones are going to do that and which ones aren't. And so like the whole time you're in the barrel, you're staring at rocks at the end of the barrel.
Ugh.
And you like, if you get wiped out, like you're at risk of kind of being thrown into that scenario. I mean, most of the time, to be honest, because there's so much water pushing against the rocks, that even if you wipe out in that scenario, it pushes against the rocks and across them, but like it's still in the water. So you kind of get dragged across in front of the rocks, but not on them, if that makes any sense, because there's so much force. Like if you're trying to travel forward towards the rocks, there's so much sideways action on the water that just pulls you across rather than into.
And water's coming back, like it's bouncing off the rocks.
Exactly.
Okay,
but, you definitely...
sounds pretty safe.
Yeah. You definitely hit some hard stuff, and there's definitely been quite a few horrific injuries and stuff out there. But that's why I guess your body needs to be in a pretty good shape to deal with some of those stuff. And, you can always pick your wave. I think a lot of the major problems out there have occurred on waves that shouldn't have been ridden, waves that are shaping up too great. A lot of guys tow into it on jet skis. They pick their wave well before it's like even on the slab. It's just a lump of swell, and then they're towing behind a jet ski. Yeah, this one, and they're just so committed already that once they pull into it, it could be the angle could be slightly off, and then they're in a world of trouble. And
so with the jet ski approach, you can commit to something that's perhaps not a good choice.
Yeah,
right.
You're pressured into because you've already ridden it for 80 meters.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got so much speed, and you're already into it. And it takes so much effort to kind of set all that up and pull yourself in on a jet ski. And, they kind of just want to give it. Some of these guys who surf some of the biggest stuff out there, they're just like absolute adrenaline junkies and just want to give it a go regardless if it's a suicide wave or not.
Was that the wave? Was it Richie Vass who surfed it with
Richie's out there a lot, yeah.
Did he do it with the inflatable alligator after Steve Irwin died? Ever see that footage?
If he did, I don't know. I don't know if he... It sounds like something Richie would do.
Yeah, he dropped it on this fucking flimsy... I'm sure I could be misquoting there, but yeah, it's not... He gets creamed.
Can you tow in on the wild body surfing?
It's not yet been done, but again, it's one of those things.
Yeah, it's got to work it out.
It's just exciting that kind of stuff has never happened. I mean, there's been a few clips of people doing like the bodyboard to body surf transfer. And lots of amazing clips of surfers. There was one of Kelly Slater who was a pipeline, and he dropped into this barrel on his board and then came off in the barrel, but then continued to body surf his way out of the barrel. And then his surfboard flicked up behind him, and he grabbed his surfboard and jumped back on and finished the wave off on his board. And it's like that kind of stuff is great because that goes viral through the surf community, and then it puts body surfing on the map. And they're like, "Whoa, you can make a barrel body surfing?" You're like, hell yeah.
In that size? That's mad.
Yeah.
I saw yesterday it's a guy surfing, someone drops in, it's a friendly thing, but the barrel's still like 5 foot and they're tucking in and they're both kind of in it, and one gets knocked off and his board kind of hangs out and the other guy picks it up and he's surfing and he's holding that guy's board, right? And then he jumps, he swaps boards somehow. Yeah. Oh man, it looks amazing. So cool.
But yeah, it's cool. It's interesting in the community too. Like, I don't know if you mentioned before that you bodyboarded, sorry, Paulie. Like there is there is a bit of a hierarchy in surfing amongst surfers and bodyboarders. But the beauty of body surfing is we seem to skip all that. We seem to get a lot more respect, or just people don't even, bother that we're there. Like, as a body surfer, you generally sit more on the inside. And so you're not, like a bodyboarder would take a wave almost as soon as it starts to rise up. They can catch a wave from very, very deep. And so they've got like first dibs on all the waves because it's super easy to catch it. So that's why a lot of surfers will get pissed off, is because they steal a lot of their waves and they're waiting there and they don't get a chance to even go for it. Whereas a body surfer, you're sat inside of the surfers, so you're just picking up their scraps. So they got no issue with you whatsoever because you're not interfering with their waves, you're not stealing waves from them. You're just another person who's out there enjoying the ocean and wants to catch waves. So we've got like some amazing kind of connections and community responses from surfers, which is cool, because we just seem to skip that annoying hierarchy that exists in surfing.
Yeah, and that's a pretty considerable hurdle speaking from experience, like trying to pick up surfing at an older age. This was years ago, but I just found it really hard because there is that hierarchy, and when you're a kook like I was, you go out, you paddle into like reasonable surf. There's a bunch of people there. There's only a limited amount of waves.
Yeah,
there can be a lot of bad energy around. Like
it's the same thing against kooks. Yeah, it's like you're impacting their waves. You might be taking away from them or stop them from getting a wave. As long as you don't do that, it's fine. But yeah, as a body surfer, we're never really stealing their waves. We're still like way out the back, but the beauty of body surfing is you can drop into a wave at the very last minute, even if it's like beyond vertical. You don't have to paddle into it and then stand up and set your line and then drop down. You can paddle into a vertical drop and drop top to bottom and dig your elbow in, your hip in, and your ribs in, and hold your line, and then you're set and you can ride it through.
Oh man, I'm getting excited.
It's great, and it is the thrill, like that thrill of disconnect. But you can't easily do that on a surfboard, like unless you're extremely talented. Like a lot of the guys who surf Cape Solander and hours and stuff. They might do like a big vertical drop on their surfboard, but stick it and have the confidence to do that. And most people just wouldn't. But with body surfing, it's very hard to mess it up. You have to mess it up badly to mess it up. It's just drop in at last minute, have some fun.
I really love how you're describing it, how it's kind of new and up and coming, and a lot of stuff hasn't been done yet. Because I grew up as a skateboarder. Joey, we skated together when we were young, and I very much identify myself as a skateboarder, even though I rarely do. I always got a deck in the boot, but I follow a lot of skateboarders and I follow skateboard culture. And it's I feel like there's always a hierarchy when you get to a park, but skateboarding is like different and I was a street skater, like you can skate anywhere, and there's more opportunity in places and it's more widespread in locations, but they've always gone through decades of pioneering, and you get to a point and it's exciting to watch, and someone starts doing something, or the technology changes with the trucks. People can lock on easier. Now everyone's on wider boards and it's changing how people do things. And then it's also like people are skating spots that have never been skated before. And then it's becoming more commonplace for people to be skating just these giant sets and giant gaps and stuff. I love watching it.
It's exciting.
So it's like at the time for body surfing, it's still like there's so much yet to be discovered. Yeah. Maybe someone's going to figure out how to toe in or whatever that is. That's mad.
The thing is, like, I don't ever see body surfing becoming hugely mainstream. I think it suffers from a very similar problem to jiu-jitsu. It's not really a spectator sport. The people who love to
How
watch...
dare you say that about pajama fighting? It's the shittest sport to watch.
Most people who watch jiu-jitsu do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of been holding it back. It's obviously growing, but it's holding it back from becoming a hugely popular spectator sport.
I do it and I don't watch it. I find it boring. So yeah, I fully agree.
Yeah. And it's the same with body surfing. Like, there's no denying that surfing on a surfboard is like incredible to watch. It's like artistic and sexy, and everyone loves it. But body surfing, like, you can barely see people when they're in the water because half of them is like underwater, and most of the time they're probably in the barrel and you can't see them anyway, or there's just a head popping out of some white water or something. But like, unless you've been in that scenario and you know how that feels and what he's seeing and what they're seeing, and like it's not really much enjoyment for people to watch. Like, I've been trying to convince my wife to, watch body surfing, and I'll go out there and catch some like incredible waves, some of the waves of my life. And I was like, "Did you see it?" And she was like, "Yeah, I guess." Looked good. Look, like you're having some fun.
Yeah.
So I don't think it will ever become hugely mainstream, just because it's not going to be a spectator sport like surfing. It's not going to have avid followers, and
How does the comp work? Do you say there was a comp, or was it just
so I run a competition every year, or have done up until COVID.
Yep.
It's interesting actually, the competition setup, because I when I first started getting into body surfing and was getting to a relatively decent level, I attended a few competitions, which were like individual competitions, and for me it felt super strange, because I'd go in the water during the heat and there'd be like 6 other guys there, but no one was talking. Everyone was kind of on their own mission, and like watching their clocks and kind of like get into position, because you got to like sneak in your wave and time it out, and just competitive vibe. And for me, it took away like the fundamentals of what body surfing is about, which is if you swim out in the water as a body surfer and you see someone else in the water body surfing, you generally just swim up and say, "Hey man, how are you?" Have a chat, and like it's that kind of level of sport. And then adding this competitive level to it kind of made me feel really weird, and was like, this isn't like body surfing. This is a whole nother thing. But then I attended quite a few kind of big community events that we set up. We'd go camping every year, and the number of attendees would get bigger and bigger, and we end up camping with like 70 people who all just loved body surfing and wanted more and more events to bring people together. So I came up with the concept of a team-based body surfing competition. So you enter as a team of 10, and you all get a turn in the water, but your scores are averaged out amongst your entire team. And we built that out until the last one we did at Maruba just before COVID. We had 140 registered competitors, and all of their kind of partners and stuff on the beach watching, and it was amazing, because there is in that kind of setup, there isn't that individual competitiveness. No one's kind of really kind of competing against each other. You're just out there trying to do what you want to do, have some fun, and go in and tag your mate, and then they go and do it, and it kind of takes away that hugely competitive edge. There's definitely people who like want to win, but just because there's so many people there that are interested in body surfing, you've all got that in common. And I'm sure it's similar to skating. Like, people who love skating, they'll come from different walks of life. There's many different kind of people who love body surfing. And so it's just a super interesting bunch of people that just enjoy being around other body surfers. And so it's just a community event, and winning is just a bonus. And it kind of really come from that. And out of that, because it was a team-based thing, we started, when I first launched like the competition thing, and was like, let's just get a few teams together and have it out in the water, because there's a bit of social media banter going on between a few individuals and whatnot. So we started the East Sydney Body Surfers. There was like, I think on our first ever thing, we just organised it through Instagram. First ever meetup at Tamarama Beach was 13 people, just to come out of the woodwork. Like, oh, I've been body surfing by myself for years. I never knew there was anyone else. And so then we started surfing as a crew, and then we'd start an Instagram page around that crew. And then from that, there's been like 16 teams around Australia, all united. And it inspires this kind of like someone who's surfing by themselves and wants to come to Wompoff was the name of the competition, is the name of the competition, Wompoff Australia. If they want to come and attend the event, they've got to get a team together. So then all of a sudden they're inspired to look within their community, reach out social media wise, and be like, hey, look, I'm going body surfing on Saturday. Anyone else want to come? Like, we'll get a bit of a crew together. And then they start surfing together every weekend, and build out all these crews. And now there's like crews all over, which is
That's so cool.
Incredible. So yeah, it's a competition, in a nutshell, but it's more a big community event. But I just can't wait to get this next one done now post-COVID, and get the next one in, because we haven't been able to do it since 2019.
Oh, wow. So it's going to be big energy, the next one.
I hope so, yeah, especially now that all borders are open up, because we get people flying in from overseas. We get people in from Hawaii, from California, from the UK. They'll all enter teams, and interstate, WA, Victoria, South Australia. So, yeah, it's people are keen and willing to travel for it. So I'm hoping that, fingers crossed we can get something locked in for this year, and people can come, and it will be in Sydney if we do it. So you guys should definitely come down. Maybe even if I train you up between now and then, you could enter a jungle team.
Whoa.
Dude, I'll be down. I know. Yeah, you're keen. I'll give it a go.
We got the Bondi lifeguards in on the last event. They entered the team.
How did they go?
Corey, was Corey in there?
Corey, yeah.
Is he still one of them?
Yeah, he was in there. Maxi and all those other mainstream ones.
Yep.
But yeah, they left straight after the event. And they I think they were a bit separate to the community side of things. They were there having a laugh and stuff, but they disappeared as soon as the event was over. And that's something that doesn't normally happen in the bow surfing world. Like, people just kind of want to hang out and go, what can we do now? So as part of the event, the after party has become a huge part. And the last one we did, which was in Maroubra, we did it over at One Drop, which you guys know well.
Oh, yeah,
yes.
that's right.
And we hired out the entire... Clay was amazing. We hired out the entire place on a Saturday night, and we had 200 people come who'd been competing all day at the competition.
Oh,
we come and did all the awards and stuff there, and had a free bar, and it was incredible. And it's just going to show that it's all just basically a community event, just an excuse for everyone to get together and catch some waves, and then have a big after party talking about it.
Fucking cool.
But yeah, you guys should definitely come along. We're hopefully going to do it this year, and we'll get it working.
Got to ask, is there any tricks? Like, you can do a barrel roll, hey?